2016, it felt like a year where everything was changing, right? Globally, technologically, it was just a whirlwind. But what did all that change actually look like for real people, especially in the world of online education? Well, that's what we're going to dive into. We're going to follow the personal journey of an educator, Morton Flatt Paulson, and use his own experiences from that year to see how learning was evolving, one connection at a time. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. This story isn't just about new gadgets or software. Nope, it's about people. People who are creative, a little bit stubborn, and who are finding new ways to learn and connect, often against some pretty incredible odds. That's the real spirit of this journey. So, where do we start this journey? Well, we're going to the very edges of the map, to the remote communities of the North Atlantic. First up, we're heading to the Faroe Islands and Greenland to see how online education was becoming an absolute lifeline. Our first stop is this little village called Vágur in the Faroe Islands, and it was facing a huge problem. It was shrinking. The mayor, Dennis Holm, was watching all the young people pack up and leave, simply because they had to go elsewhere to get an education. So the big question was, how do you stop your entire community from just fading away? The answer they came up with was just beautifully simple, but so effective: the study lab. And get this, forget about some massive, expensive new campus. This was just a regular house, kitted out with some tech and counselors. It became this local hub that could connect villagers to all sorts of educational opportunities without them ever having to leave home. And did it work? You bet it did. In just its first 3 years, 800 people had used the Vágur Study Lab. When Paulson visited, he met 7 young women studying there, and 4 of them were pregnant. And that shows you the real impact, right? These study labs weren't just about getting degrees, they were giving people the hope and the tools to build a future right where they belonged. All right, so now let's hop over to Greenland, or Kalalit Nunaat. The challenges here were a little different. We're talking serious geographic isolation, crazy high internet costs, but the core idea was exactly the same: using tech to bridge these huge distances. While the Faroes had this awesome community-driven model, Greenland's projects were often kicked off by visionary outsiders. But the goal? It was the same: connect a scattered population. And you really can't talk about Greenland without understanding the culture. Nearly 90% of the population is Inuit, with these incredibly deep family ties to really remote areas. That makes leaving home for school especially tough. So you can see why distance learning was such a game changer, letting people study while staying connected to their communities. So these local stories are amazing, right? But they weren't just happening in a bubble. Let's zoom out a bit and see how the bigger professional networks were weaving all these individual threads together into this global tapestry of flexible education. This timeline for Flexible Education Norway, or FuN, which is a great name, it's like a mini history of the entire field. You can literally see the evolution just by looking at how the name changed over time. It starts with correspondence schools, think mail-in courses. Then it moves to distance education. And then, the key word, flexible. That journey perfectly mirrors the shift from paper and post to the dynamic digital world we're in now. And this spirit of change was absolutely everywhere in 2016. In Budapest, the European Distance and E-Learning Network, EDEN, was celebrating its 25th anniversary. And the theme? Reimagining learning environments. You had 310 people from 37 different countries all gathered in one place to share ideas and really push the boundaries of what was possible. But this was way more than just a conference with a bunch of talks. It was a celebration of a real community. There were awards for the pioneers in the field, new programs to support young scholars, and deep dives into what were then hot new topics, like MOOCs and open badges. This is how a field actually grows: by celebrating wins, lifting up new talent, and always looking ahead. Okay, so amidst all this professional stuff, technology was also quietly rewriting the rules of our personal lives. And these two worlds, the professional and the personal, they were starting to merge in some really fascinating and totally unexpected ways. This quote comes from a pretty wild workplace, a 22-foot boat named Blauman. Paulson spent 12 days sailing along the Oslo fjord, sleeping out in the open air, all while answering student emails and planning courses. I mean, what a perfect picture of this new reality, right? Work and life weren't stuck in one place anymore. It was this incredible new freedom. But sometimes, this mix of digital and personal, It does more than just offer flexibility. Sometimes it changes everything. This question came from Paulson's adopted daughter, Andrea, during a very frantic phone call. What she had just found online was about to change their lives forever. What happened was, she had found her biological mother on Facebook. Just like that. Something that once could have taken years of painful searching, if it was even possible at all, was now accomplished with a few clicks. It was a careful, super emotional process, but it was a journey made possible entirely by social media, connecting a family across continents. And how in the world did they communicate with all the language and cultural barriers? Well, with tools that we all use every day, like Google Translate and Duolingo. It's just such a powerful reminder that the same tech that was powering online courses was also enabling these deeply human reconnections, piecing together a family's history one translated message at a time. So, we've seen these incredible stories of connection, from these tiny villages to intensely personal family histories. Now, let's just pull the lens back one last time and put all of this in the wider context of what else was happening in the world during that very same year, 2016. And it was a year of profound upheaval. I mean, from the Brexit vote and the US election to political turmoil in Brazil and these horrific attacks in Nice and Berlin, the headlines were just dominated by stories that felt like they were pulling the world apart. But here's the amazing thing. At the very same time the world seemed to be fracturing on this massive scale, all these quiet, determined efforts in education were doing the exact opposite. They were building bridges. They were connecting people. They were creating communities across vast, vast distances. So it makes you wonder, right? In a world that's always changing, maybe the blueprints for a more connected future aren't found in the big, screaming headlines. Maybe they're found with the creative and stubborn people in a little study lab, or in a family reconnecting with Google Translate, or in a global community of educators who are just dedicated to bridging the distance one learner at a time.